Self-awareness is a concept we often think we understand, but how deeply do we really know it? It's not just about recognizing our habits, patterns, or behavior, but about truly aligning with our inner selves in every moment and every aspect of our lives. In today's conversation, I have a really special guest, and we're going to explore how cultivating this deeper sense of self-awareness can be one of the most powerful tools for growth. My guest is Linda Binns. She's an experienced energy coach, speaker, and author with over 26 years of experience empowering professional women to embrace their true selves and thrive. Drawing from her expertise and personal experience, she inspires and empowers clients to envision their highest potential and find inner peace amidst life's chaos. Linda's compassionate approach, rooted in her experiences of overcoming divorce, homelessness, and self-doubt, ensures her clients feel safe and supported. She teaches practical solutions for releasing limiting beliefs and aligning with one's true self. With a commitment to authenticity, trust, and personal growth, Linda guides her clients to bringing positive energy into their lives and the world. Her mission is to help others celebrate their uniqueness and lead empowered, joyful lives. I am so happy to have you on the Discover WellBeing Podcast. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Thank you, Alison. It's my pleasure to be here.
Before we launch into the content, would you be kind enough just to share what well-being means to you?
Of course. Being to me is a sense of, I want to say, inner peace and calm. A knowledge that you are so rooted in your own being and your own self-awareness that you don't resist anything. You know, there's no need to resist anything. So anything that comes along, you know you have the strength, the resources, the ability to deal with it. And you recognize that things that happen that are maybe unexpected or unwanted even are happening for you and not to you. So it's that sense of being really rooted in your being that gives you that sense of calmness.
As you described it, I felt like an oak tree.
Yes.
Or bamboo, where it has shallow roots and it has this ability to be flexible and resilient.
Yes.
But what came to me was really the oak tree, just standing so solid and expansive and just trusting that all of it will pass and then we can celebrate the seasons. So thank you for sharing that. That was really eloquent. So personal journey and background. I think that's always a really helpful place for a host and a guest to start so the listeners can get a better understanding of your journey of overcoming divorce and homelessness, and is really empowered and inspiring. So how did cultivating awareness during these times support you in your journey?
I realized at some point, and I can't exactly pinpoint the exact time, probably as I was going through my divorce is when I started the journey. I realized that I really was not who I thought I was, who I had been led to believe I was, and who I had been led to believe I was. The conditioning I had said that pretty much I was worthless. I was stupid. I was told that many times growing up. Really, that I had nothing to offer the world. I had truly, when I look back, it seems quite remarkable to me now. I had no self-esteem, no confidence at all. And when I look back I got married at the age of 18. I left home at 17, got married at 18. And then my marriage lasted 7 years. And when I look back at that, I can completely see how I was during that. I mean, I was a very insecure person. And of course, a marriage is not going to last through that. But what it did was it got me out of that environment that I had been in, that environment that said you are worthless, you have nothing to offer. And so the divorce, although I lost my home at that time, because when my husband left, he left me with some significant debt. I couldn't pay the mortgage on the house. We had bought a car with a car loan. He smashed the car and I was left having to pay the car loan. So there was all of this. It was like everything was falling apart and I did not have really any support, any people that I felt I could go to help me. So I really felt I was on my own. So you could say I was forced into really having to learn who I am and what is it that I want, because I never had any concept of that growing up, that I could actually think about what do I want in my life. It was just a case of me falling into whatever it was that came up. And so I would say that was, as traumatic and difficult as that time was, it was the starting point of me having to really look at myself. And when I was in the workplace, when I would go to work, I was always terrified that they would find out at any moment that I didn't know what I was doing, that I shouldn't be in that job, that I wasn't good enough for it. And instead, the exact opposite happened. My bosses would tell me what a great job I did. I would get promoted. And so I started to question this conditioning that I'd had that said, you have no value, you are worthless. And I thought, maybe that's not true. And so just that, I think that was the starting point of my journey to opening myself up to other possibilities and starting to really look at myself and learn, who am I and what is it that I want for myself in my life. And without self-awareness, you cannot do that. You just stay stuck in that place of being who you are not, because if you don't know who you are, other people will want to tell you who you are. And then if you believe that, that's the life that you live. So I am forever grateful for that experience, as traumatic as it was, because it was, if you like, the beginning of that journey to knowing myself.
Oh, thank you for sharing so deeply. What I'm hearing also is that youth, I think, is one of the greatest opportunities to cultivate that awareness, but oftentimes it doesn't come till later because we get such pushback from systems and society, and whether it even be family, right? That you want to speak up, that you want to be able to follow your path. And it's always intrinsic, right? Yes, children, but more so as we get older, but falling into patterns that support other people's agendas or systems agendas. And so for your bosses not to see that, but only see your brilliance in your capacity to fulfill on your job, etc. But for you to say, no, I'm getting feedback that they see me differently. So then how do I cultivate this awareness to show up differently, more fully?
I have always been blessed. I would say, once I left my home environment, I have been blessed to have people in my life who saw things in me I couldn't see in myself, and then helped me to begin to see those things in myself.
All leading to the work you do today with women. Can you share how cultivating awareness is such a powerful tool?
It's always the starting point. I know talk a lot on the show about research and studies, and so there's a study that I have discovered. Well, actually, it may have been two separate studies, but they came up with the same results, reported in the Harvard Business Review and in Forbes. I actually printed it out. But an organizational psychologist and author of the book called Insight did a study that found that 95% of people think they are self-aware. So we think we are, but truly only about 10 to 15% are. And some people fear that becoming more self-aware means seeing the ugly truth about yourself. And I definitely did fall into that category. What I have found as I work with people, they come to me with a certain problem. For example, I've got all these things going on in my life. I need to manage my time better. I need to learn how to not procrastinate and get all these things done. And then there are other things coming along. I need to be able to add those in as well, for example. And so as we start to look at that and we start to explore how they feel and what's going on for them, we very quickly start to see that time management isn't the problem. Organization isn't the problem. It's what they're putting their energy into that is not in alignment with who they are, that is not to their true values. They have lost that sense, if indeed they ever had it, of who they are and what's important to them. And unless you start from there, if you don't know what's really going on, you can't solve it, you can't correct it, you can't transform it. So we have to start there. And it's quite interesting how many people, women especially, really don't know themselves, don't know what they want. They think they know what they want. And so everything they're putting their energy into is what they think they want. And then as we start to explore that more, they really start to be amazed and in discovering that I really don't need to be doing all of this. This is not what I want. This is not who I am. And so unless you start there, you cannot really long term lead people to that sense of well-being, that sense of accomplishment, fulfillment, true fulfillment. So it has to start with self-awareness. Because may I just share a quick example with you that I think will highlight
Please.
this? The lady I worked with several years ago, and she came to me because she'd been working for this particular company for many years. She liked the work, she liked the people she worked with, but she had never been given the opportunity to be promoted. Now, when new people came in, they would ask her to train them. And she would train them, and very often those people would be promoted. And so when she'd asked her boss about this, he said, "Oh, we value you, we appreciate you, and your turn will come," and all of that. And the way they valued and appreciated her was that they knew she had all the knowledge and they used her to train all these other people. So when she came, that was what she wanted. How do I get a promotion? So as we started looking at who she was, the energy that she was putting into her life, if you like, we discovered, first of all, that a promotion really wasn't what she wanted. What she wanted was to work in a place where she enjoyed the work and the people she worked with, but where she was valued and appreciated and well compensated for what she did. So that's what we focused on, not the promotion. The other piece of it was, if people are not valuing you in your life, I think you have to look at yourself. How are you valuing yourself? Because if you don't value yourself, I can pretty much guarantee the people around you won't value you either. And so we had to look at that. And one of the pieces of that was she was living in her childhood home. Her parents had passed away and left the house to her. She was the only child. Her experiences growing up were not positive. Like me, she was led to believe she wasn't good enough and had nothing really of value to offer. And so to me, the fact that she was living in this home, in this environment, constantly, daily reinforced that conditioning that she wasn't good enough. And so really, to me, that was the energy she was showing up with. That's what she believed about herself. And so I asked her to make some changes in her home, as well as changing her focus from "I want a promotion" to "I deserve a job where I am valued and appreciated and well compensated for what I do." So she started doing that. And 2 weeks later, she called me and said, "This isn't working." I said, "Okay, why is it not working?" She said, "They've just fired me. They said they're restructuring and they've let me go." And I said, "I know this is hard to believe, but I do believe that it is working. And that is why you have been let go. Something else is out there for you. So just keep doing what you've been doing." And so she did. And another 2 weeks passed and she called me. And there was a company that she interacted with regularly in her previous role. They had just discovered that the company had let her go. They immediately contacted her and said, "We want you," because they knew her value. And so she got this job. She didn't even have to go for an interview because they already knew her. She got this job where they already knew and valued her. It was much more pay. The best thing of all, from my perspective, was it was in another state. So she got to sell that house and move somewhere else where she started her own life and really started to be able to be herself. If she had continued to focus only on "I want a promotion" and stayed in that environment, and continue to focus on that, I think she'd still be stuck there today, probably. So it's without that self-awareness of who am I really and what's really going on in my life and what is this really telling me about myself, without that awareness, you can't make those changes. You can't start putting your energy into the things that are really important for you.
That was an exquisite story on many levels, but what it also emphasized is how important a coach is.
Yes.
Women have the greatest opportunity to say yes to themselves, but we can't become ourselves by ourselves.
You need someone to see that in you, to mirror that for you, to hold that space for you and help you to see what's really happening and hold that space for you to become, if you like, to let go of who you are not so that you can become who you really are. Yes.
Something that you also mentioned is that when we're seeing the results and they're not quite what we've named we want, it's really unsettling.
Right. And this is why it's so helpful, because it's so helpful to have someone who can support you through that, because there is an element of panic when you start to do this work and then it seems like everything falls away. And so your first thought is, this isn't working. I need to go back to what I was doing before. No, it's a sign that, yes, this is working. And what has to happen for you, just as it did with me, is everything has to fall away so that you can step into what is really right for you.
Oh, beautiful. So we're going into the section with energy, beliefs, and alignment. And you mentioned self-doubt. How do you help women become aware of the patterns and the thoughts and guiding them into that next step?
You know, the most successful people still have self-doubt, women, again, women especially. And so I think it's so helpful to look back at what you've actually accomplished, because we forget. We're so busy thinking about the next thing we have to do and the next thing we have to do and the next thing we have to do. Let me share a quick example, because I think sometimes examples highlight this more. A woman I know who's a leadership coach, very skilled, very talented, very much in demand, was ready to write a book. So she started writing the book, and the more she got into the book, the more self-doubt started to come up. And so as we were having a conversation, all of that was coming out. Who's going to read it? Who am I to write this book? And I said to her, so can you tell me about some of the clients you've worked for? And she did. And I said, and those clients that have called you back time and time again, I said, do you think that they thought you didn't know what you were talking about? Do you think they asked you back because you really didn't know what you were doing? And so she started looking at that. And I asked her to just look at that, look at some of the things she had done. And that really helped her realize, you know what, I do know what I'm talking about. I do have the right to write this book and people will want to read it. So I think sometimes we get so caught up in the next thing we have to do. We never take the time. And this has happened to me. I had a coach who told me to stop. She said, I want you to make a list for me of all the programs you've done and the things that you've done and the places you've spoken and all of this. And so I did that. And I was shocked when I put this together. I thought, oh my gosh, I've done so much. We forget. And I think if you can reconnect with that, then you start to see what you're really capable of and what you've already done. And that can, for me, that's a really good way to start to dismiss that self-doubt. So it starts to dissolve, because it cannot stay with you in the face of that. And even people women so often say to me, I haven't really accomplished anything. I haven't really done anything. And so as we start to look back and I ask them questions, yes, they have. They are brilliant. And they don't see their brilliance. So I think it's helping people to see that brilliance. But for doing it yourself, just start looking back at some of the things you've come through, some of the things you've achieved. I can look back at who I was and think, well, how on earth did I get here? This wasn't supposed to happen. I'm not supposed to be I was not supposed to be. My family to this day are still bemused by me. I didn't follow that pattern that they laid out for me. So I think it can be really helpful to just start looking back at what you've done and what you've accomplished and how far you've come. And I think most of the time you're going to be pleasantly surprised with that. And that can help to release that self-doubt.
Yeah, follow the energy of success. And looking back,
Yeah.
that's evidence of I was supported by the
Yes.
universe. I had it
Yeah.
within me. I'm still brilliant and imperfect.
Mm-hmm.
And not to get caught up in the energy of self doubt, because it's just a remembering, right? Just like when
Mm.
we meditate, we're coming back and we're remembering who we are in our
Mm.
wholeness. And
Yes.
these new opportunities, when we are becoming even more visible, I think is often something that it is a pattern, the I'm invisible pattern. And you set up those situations where you are intentionally not being seen, not being recognized and value because you're not ready yet. So that's an opportunity to examine that a little more fully. But when you're stepping out of that energetic pattern, it requires then again someone else to be able to support you on that journey, because it
Yes.
can be really wobbly.
It can. And the universe will often put you in situations that you think you can't handle, but you do. I always thought I am an introvert, and I always thought my place is supporting someone else. I'm quite happy in the background. I don't want to be in the foreground. I don't want to be in front of people. I'm quite happy supporting somebody else. So then what happens was my husband and I moved to the United States. We moved initially to St. Louis in Missouri, and honestly, I think people where we were had never heard an accent before, because all of a sudden it was like, oh, talk to me, say something to me. And I would think, they would say, I love your accent. And it was like I stood out, just I opened my mouth and I stood out, and people knew who I was. And it was, I think that was a starting point there of me starting to realize I'm not supposed to be in the background. I am supposed to be in front of people. It took me years before I was comfortable being on video. And then what does the universe do? It threw me into, I was invited to go onto a TV show, a local TV news show, to talk about my book, one of my books. So I did that. It was just a 5-minute slot, and I was terrified. The camera's in front of me, but I did it. And I was thinking all the way home, I was thinking, oh, I wish I'd said this and I shouldn't have said that. And I didn't think it had gone very well. And then they called me and said, would you come back again? So I went back. And then from that, I was a regular on that show every month for 2 years. So it's like the universe puts you in these situations. You think you're supposed to be in the background? No, here you go. It's really interesting.
Oh, okay. I'd love for you to just sprinkle in at this point, and then we'll get back on track. The next one is finding inner peace, our next little section. But you mentioned that you're an author. Would you share the titles and theme of each?
Yes. So I've written seven books now. So my very first one, I was working. So when I first started my business, I was a feng shui practitioner and holistic health consultant. So it was energy of the environment, energy of the person, your body. And I taught a lot of classes, and my feng shui students would say, you have to write a book, you have to write a book. I didn't want to write a book. I thought, who am I to write a book? Who wants to read my book? But I wrote it because people wanted me to, because I used to do everything for everybody else and not for myself. But anyway, that's another story. But so I started writing that book, and it was going to be just a general feng shui book. And what I did was I wrote to my clients and I said, I'm going to write this book. So would you be willing to share your story of what was happening before you had your consultation with me, and then what we did, and then what's happened afterwards? And so as people sent in their stories to me, it became very clear that this is actually a book about relationships, and it was relationships of all kinds and how your environment impacts those relationships. And so that's what the book ended up being, Feng Shui for Your Relationships. So that was my very first book. The next one, it's actually a series of 4 books. I did a lot of work with realtors. And a realtor said to me one time, I wish you had a book that was tips for somebody when they're selling a home, or somebody when they're moving into a new home, what they can do with the energy to help them sell their home or to help them settle into their new home. And I thought, well, I can do that. So I got off the phone with her and I wrote those 2 books. And then I thought, why don't I write some others? So I did energy tips for your income, to improve income, and energy tips for your health. And so they're just little short, very quick reads, like a tip, 30 tips, something you can do every day for a month or something. So I wrote that series of books. Then I did a journal, because whenever I do classes or start working with people, journaling can be a big part of that. And then I did a class on the energy of money and your relationship with money, and why we as women have difficulty very often with that relationship with money. So I did a class on that, and then they wanted me to write a book. I wrote that book, but I got, since I'm not a financial advisor, I got input and other people to write chapters with their expertise within that book. So that was another book. And then the book I wrote maybe 2 years ago actually was more the book that I wanted to write, and not because somebody else had asked me to do it. And so it's called Value Me, the benefits of being a highly sensitive professional. And it's all about how the percentage of the population who is considered to be highly sensitive, which is 20 to 30%, and the struggles that we have in a professional environment, whether we have our own businesses or whether we work for somebody else, and how we are the ones who are often not valued and appreciated because we don't know ourselves and we don't value and appreciate ourselves. So that's what I wrote about in that book. So I think that's all of them.
Oh, congratulations. I was aware of a couple. I didn't realize the extent of them all. And I can imagine the impact that each have made on people's lives, which is, I think, just for me, the best part about life is that we get this opportunity to not only experience transformation, to see ourselves, I used to be here and now I'm here, and then to be able to take that experience and impart it in our creative ways, in you, in your book and the TV show, and then have an impact on other people's lives. And it really is coming in to that sense of ownership.
It is. And you can't have that without that self-awareness piece. You learn who you really are, you accept that, you own it. And I had a marketing coach once who said the best thing ever to me, and it's something that stuck with me. She said, to be successful at anything, she said, know who you are and be that. And I thought, that is so simple, but it's so profound. And it applies to everything. Know who you are and then just be that. You don't have to be anything else. That was so profound to me. I love that statement.
Well, speaking of that, you mentioned highly sensitive person, and that was my first podcast for people to understand who I am, why I'm doing this. And I shared that I'm an HSP, a highly sensitive person. And I didn't realize that until I was in my 40s. I did on some level. I knew that certain scenarios were very calming and peaceful and I could connect and I felt safe. And then, but being out in the world, whether it was in school or professionally, it was so easy to get off. How do you suggest with your clients that they begin to cultivate inner peace so the awareness can come to the surface?
You have to learn the art of pausing, if you like. The more, and this sounds very counterintuitive, but the more you have to do and the more anxious you are about all the things you have to do, the best thing you can do for yourself is slow down, is stop, is just take a pause, take a breath. And maybe one of the things I did was if I had a long to-do list, I would look at it and say, what's the one thing I want to accomplish today? I don't need to do the whole list. If I accomplish one thing today, what is the most important thing on that list? And I would give myself permission, if you like, to just do that. And then I would find that I would get that done and then I could go on to the next one. But I never expected myself. That's a key right there, I think, is expectation. What is the expectation you have for yourself? Because very often it is so unrealistic. So I think being aware of your expectations, your expectation to have this big list of things done by the end of the day, if you turn that around and say, my expectation is I just would like to do one of these things today, you'll actually find you accomplish more that way than if you try to push yourself and make yourself do everything that's on that list. So it's that giving yourself space, giving yourself room, taking a step back and giving yourself the grace to say, I don't have to do all of this. And what is important to me? What is most important to me? Because all of these other things may be important to other people, but is it what I truly want to be doing? So it's a way of starting to develop that level of self-awareness. But you can't do it if your mind's so active and you're so busy. That's why you have to take a step back, take a breath, pause, allow that for yourself, because that self-awareness cannot come when your life and your mind is so full of everything else. So you need space, you need time, you need to step back. And as counterintuitive as that is, you will actually find you accomplish more when you take that approach than when you're trying to multitask and do everything all at once.
Yes.
And that does bring inner peace. It's a great feeling. It's liberating.
Yes. And my takeaway from what you just shared is that there's a difference, and I believe this, but then you said it, so it's bringing it up for me, is that there is a difference between fulfillment and having a full schedule.
Oh, yes.
Because everybody,
Yes.
you can, even if you name 30 things that you needed to do, that's an exaggeration, but if you just wrote down 30 things and then just attributed one thing per day, you would get them all
Mm.
done in a month.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
oftentimes those things on the list are not fulfilling.
No.
And so when you describe that energy, there's so much going into it. But if you don't have the balance of the empty space, that space of neutrality and connection with self, then there's no fulfillment in that.
No. You just reminded me of something. If I could just share very quickly, I was talking to one woman who, it was around Christmas time, and she was complaining because every year she decorated the house beautifully. She put all this effort into decorating the house, and her husband and her three sons never appreciated it, ignored it, didn't care about it. And she was saying, I go to all this effort and they don't say anything and they don't appreciate it. And I said, well, why are you doing it? Are you doing it for them, or are you doing it for you? And truly, she was doing it for her because she wanted it. She liked it. I said, then do it for you. Don't do it with the expectation that they should react in a certain way. Do it because it's important to you. And that way, when she does it, there's a sense of fulfillment that comes from that, because it's something she wants, rather than the disappointment of other people not reacting in the right way. So again, it's that awareness to know that really I'm doing this for me. This is important to me, right? That's where fulfillment comes from.
Yes. And then also those observing the woman that was decorating. That's just what she does. She does this at Christmas time and this is how it looks, but that's her thing. And they can appreciate that, but they're not going to necessarily be able to give her what she needs because
Right.
they're assuming that she's doing it for herself anyway.
Yes.
So
That's
it's
right.
really,
And truly she is.
yeah.
Right? But the having the awareness of that is what can bring the fulfillment, because whatever she's doing it, even though she's doing it for herself, she thinks she's doing it for them to make it nice for them, when that's not really what they need. Just that shift in awareness to say, no, I'm doing this for me. That it makes all the difference.
Yes. I'm aware that I've done that in the past. And then, but there's another opportunity for me not to do that. There's also a way, at least for me, when I do things, I seek wholeness. And so I want it to be as fulfilling and meaningful for self as I do for others. But then we have to make sure that they share the same values. And you can say, I'm doing this and I'm still getting pleasure, but are you? And then if not, then shift how you're doing that. Yeah.
I think, yes. I mean, the more, here's another beautiful thing I found: the more self-aware you are, the more accepting you are of yourself, the more you value yourself, the more the people who show up in your life are in alignment with that. And so there's less of the frustration or the expectation, disappointed expectations, or anything like that. The more you are being yourself, because you can accept that, just the energy that you put out brings the right people to you. And that in itself is so refreshing, and it's liberating. And as someone who, as highly sensitive people and empaths, we know that we can have a tendency to attract people who are not very healthy for us, who can be mean or bullying or toxic in some way, and we can take on that energy. And so the more you really know yourself and accept who you are as a highly sensitive person, as an empath maybe, then the less you start attracting those people. I used to attract those people all the time. I don't anymore. I don't need them in my life anymore, because I know who I am. I don't need them to force me to look at who I am, because I know now, if that makes sense.
That's very powerful. The opportunities to see things on an energetic level, understanding the energy of another person, the energy of this pattern, and so on and so forth. So making a list of when I feel aligned, it's another opportunity to refine these energetic relationships with self, others, and the environment.
It is, and that can be a great tool. I often ask people to make a list of anything that drains you and make a list of whatever energizes you, and then see how much of each is in your life. And you can even do that with the people in your life. You can make a list of everybody in your life. Who are the people who really feel good to be around, who support you no matter what, who energize you, and who are the people who take away your energy, or where you feel depleted when you are around them, and who are not supportive. And just having that awareness is very significant as well, because again, you can't make changes. You just start bringing more of what energizes you, starting to release what drains you.
And there's a sense of empowerment in that. Nobody's giving you the empowerment. You are giving it to yourself.
Yes. We give our power away so often by doing things that we don't really want to be doing, or that are not in alignment with who we are, by having people around in our lives that cause us to give away our power. Like, I used to give away my power because I did what other people wanted me to do. I have a little mantra now, which is, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. So I really check in with myself, because I can get excited about a new project or a new thing or something somebody asks me to be involved with. I can get excited about that. It sounds great. And then I give myself time now, whereas before I would have said, oh yes, I'll do that, and I'll do it right away. Now I give myself time to really sit with it and ask myself that question. Yes, I can do it. Is it something I really want to invest my energy in? If it is, great. Very often it isn't. And then so I don't invest my energy in that.
Oh, Linda, that is actually number 7's question. What daily habits or practices can a woman, this is for everyone, but because Linda specializes in women, we're having this conversation focused around women. And so to be able to cultivate this awareness on a different level, it is that ability to come into greater wisdom, our feminine wisdom, when we can be discerning.
And we need to be discerning. Yeah. Again, another habit I've learned to do that I found incredibly valuable is, whenever something is happening that you don't like, or whenever someone perhaps is upsetting you or treating you badly, whatever it is, instead of focusing on what's happening or what the person's doing or not doing, you instead ask yourself, What is it that I need to learn from this situation or from this person? That is an empowering question, because you turn yourself from being a victim of this is happening to me and I don't like it, to this is happening for me and there's something I need to learn about myself from this. And as soon as I learn that, then I don't need this situation anymore. That is an incredibly powerful way to be. If you do that, take that approach every single day. Whenever something happens, you find yourself feeling frustrated or upset about anything, what is it I need to learn about myself from this situation? And you will, whatever it is, you will. Maybe not right away, but it will come.
And I think that's so powerful when we're able to have friends asking questions that we might not know to ask ourselves, and the opportunity then to do it for them. And then just to say thank you. Close the circle with gratitude, because this feminine wisdom needs to be shared.
Oh my goodness, it truly does. And one of the gifts of being a highly sensitive person, and why it makes you such a wonderful coach, is that ability to connect with people and see what they're not seeing. You know, your intuition is stronger than someone who's not highly sensitive, probably. And that's what I found, that I realized once I learned about high sensitivity, it suddenly made sense of my life and made sense of me. And I realized, well, of course I went into studying about energy and learning about energy and working with energy. Of course I did, because I connect with it so well. I'd go into somebody's home as a feng shui consultant. I felt a connection with the home. I could feel if the home there was sadness, or if there was anger, or if there was love in the home. So you have that ability as a highly sensitive person to see beneath, see beyond whatever's appearing, if you like.
With you, they're on so many levels. What you are working on and how people can find you.
One of the things I've been working on, you could say a first step in developing that level of self-awareness. I have a personal energy assessment that I like to offer people. It's a great starting point, because it just goes through every area of life, and you get to just, as you fill this in, just see very quickly on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you? How do you feel about this part of your life? And it shows you a very clear picture at the end of where you're putting your energy, and where perhaps your energy is depleted and something that needs a little more focus. You can get to that on my website. It's just lindabins.com. You'll see a button right there on the homepage that will take you to that assessment. That's the best way to find out more about me anyway. And then from that assessment, I do a personal review. I'll go through the assessment and then give the person some feedback based on that. I just think I love taking action. I love offering things that give people an insight into something about themselves. And so I think that's a great starting point, a personal energy assessment.
Oh, thank you, Linda. It's generous, and it's a simple first step.
This gives you a snapshot of what's going on for you. And sometimes you're pleasantly surprised. You think, oh, wow, yes, I'm doing really well. And sometimes you'll think, oh, gosh, yes, I can do a bit more work in that area.
Yes. And are all your books available on Amazon, other bookstores?
It's best if you go to my website, lindabins.com. There's a link that says books. And a couple of them are available on Amazon. A few are not, but you can access them all there.
Beautiful. Thank you for our time together. It was just very rich conversation.
I know we don't do small talk as highly sensitive people. I know we love to dive deep, don't we?
Yes. So I'll be sure to put all the links in the show notes so people can find you and follow up. And I know you're on social media, so the nuggets that you drop, I expect, are just really unique and add value to people's lives.
That's my goal.
Are you enjoying the Discover WellBeing podcast? If so, I would love to hear about it. Leaving a review helps more people find us and really makes a difference. So share your thoughts on Apple Podcast or your favorite platform.